you don't need a bunker with $100,000 worth of stuff in 95% of survival situations, and that can be a flat tire, that could be a September 11th type thing. In 95% of those situations, they are resolved, meaning help has arrived within 72 hours.
Welcome to the Woman Angler and Adventurer podcast, inspiring real women with a passion for fishing and the outdoors to go get their adventure on. Now, here's your fearless host, Angie Scott.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Woman Angler and Adventurer podcast. This week I'm chatting with Christian Schauf. Christian is the founder of Uncharted Supply Co. They make a line of personal preparedness products that can benefit anyone, but I think they're especially useful for us outdoor adventurers. You never know when you might find yourself in an emergency or survival situation where having these products could be life-saving. The most impressive, in my opinion, is a survival pack called the 72. The timing of this episode couldn't have been better because Black Friday is this week, as we all know, and they're actually offering an astounding 35% off all their products while supplies last. So after you listen to this episode, be sure and head over to their website and check it out, unchartedsupplyco.com. All right, before we get into the episode, I wanted to share a story that recently happened. So the Sunday before last, I was sitting at my computer getting some work done. It was late in the afternoon, and I got a text message from a lady I know from one of the other docks. She said a couple people are stranded on a sandbar and needed to be picked up. You see, I'm on a reservoir, so the water raises and lowers quite a bit throughout the year, and they've already been lowering it down to get it to the winter pool level. So after gathering a little more info on the situation, we headed out to get them. And it was going to be getting dark soon, so we didn't waste any time. It turns out they had run a Sea-Doo jet boat way up on a sandbar around 9 p.m. the evening before. And funny side note, it was actually their very first date. And he hadn't taken a boat out that late in the year. Under normal conditions, he runs through that area all the time. So he couldn't believe it when he hit that sandbar and they went flying. And he said they actually did a really smooth landing, so that was lucky. Neither one got injured. But they were stuck out there and they ended up having to spend the night. It was cold. Not only that, it was windy and it rained as well. Thankfully, they had a tarp on the boat and a little bit of water, but that was it. And I kept thinking, man, the 72 Survival Pack could have really come in handy for them. When we got to them, they were tired, cold, hungry, and thirsty, and the 72 would have taken care of all that. So I just wanted to share that little story before getting into the episode. So enjoy my conversation with Uncharted Supply Company founder Christian Schauf. Christian, welcome to the Woman Angler and Adventurer podcast. I'm really excited to have you on this week. And
Thank you.
You started Uncharted Supply Company, I guess, back in 2016.
Yeah, Uncharted Supply Company. People get that mixed up a lot. I think Uncharted is kind of like a rudderless boat, to use the analogy here, but I think Uncharted is a little like just a place we haven't been yet, right? Unexplored. And I think that's usually the way emergencies feel, so that's kind of where the name came from.
I gotcha. Cool. Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm so used to boating and everything. I'm always thinking about.
Right.
So, what prompted you to start the company?
Yeah, I mean, the background on me, I grew up in Wisconsin on a dairy farm. Doing all the country kid stuff. Farmers, I think, generally are pretty competent people, right? They can kind of navigate whatever happens. And I went to school at Wisconsin, ended up playing in a band in Minneapolis for 10 years. That took us over to Iraq, where I did 40 trips to Iraq. I played over 150 shows and guided, the Pussycat Dolls and System of a Down and all these bands through Iraq. And, that was another kind of exercise in survival. So I went from, a dairy farm and hunting and fishing to, playing in a band to that going to Iraq and navigating almost survival-esque type situations out there. We mainly focused on the forward operating bases and joint security stations, which were smaller, more dangerous places. And then I took a job in Orange County, California, leading the marketing for an app company. And I was going skiing in Colorado one New Year's, was driving out my F-150, and in the mountains behind Orange County, California, it snowed 2 inches. And I sat for 8 hours while everyone around me was completely at a loss as to how to navigate what was a trivial weather event to me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, our schools don't get canceled if there's a foot of snow. It's just,
right.
just get, I remember getting out of the school bus and digging it out on the way to school when I was a kid. And now here we are in 2 inches of snow. And even though I was in a truck with all my ski gear and food and had no problem driving, I was still stuck because everyone around me was compromised. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of slapped me across the face. I remember thinking, what if there's an earthquake? This is just 2 inches of snow. How do you have such kind of inability to overcome something like this? Mm-hmm. So it sent me down a path, how do you prepare people at scale so that we can take care of ourselves and take care of others and, be part of the solution and not part of the problem. So I went back to friends of mine that I'd met throughout my life, friends that were guides on Mount Everest, bush pilots, special forces guys, military guys, doctors, and really tried to reverse engineer where our society was at, where their level of competency was at, and how to build something that I thought would materially change the outcome of a disaster. At the time I was living in Santa Monica, and man, if there's 1 million people there and something happens, there's no way first responders are going to get to everybody in time. But if half those people are prepared and can not only take care of themselves but help others, it's a completely different situation. So that's been our goal, is to create really simple, effective products that can be a game changer at scale. Because as we all know, especially these days, the world's changing quickly. Mm-hmm. So that was a long answer.
Yeah,
but,
no,
that's kind of how we started.
That's awesome. That's a great story. And what you developed, the 72 Survival System. What's the meaning behind the name there?
Sure. So as I got into researching this, I just immersed myself into this world, and the one statistic that came up over and over and over is, you don't need a bunker with $100,000 worth of stuff. In 95% of survival situations, and that can be a flat tire, that could be a September 11th type thing. In 95% of those situations, they are resolved, meaning help has arrived within 72 hours. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was like, okay, so we don't have to prepare for 3 months underground. We just need to get through a couple days. And that means a certain amount of calories, a certain amount of water, being able to be warm, maybe administer first aid, maybe a little self-protection. Mm-hmm. And for me, looking at the way most people live these days, they are, smaller spaces, right? We don't all have big farms or ranches. There are people in small apartments. There are people that move a lot, college kids, young professionals, retired people who are downsizing. Nobody wants to have a couple tons of product taking up a huge amount of space. So I wanted to build something that was cost effective, that was easy to transport, that didn't take up a ton of space, that was it was easy to say yes to, but also would tangibly make a difference. Mm-hmm. I went to all the experts that I worked with, and I said, I don't want to know what you have for you. You're an expert. You study this stuff, you geek out on this stuff. If you weren't home and there was an emergency at home and your 10-year-old son was home alone, what would you give them to change the situation for them, to help them survive? I wanted to make it really simple and really effective. And that was kind of the basis and the thesis of how we started with the 72, and that was our first product.
I love how you've got it organized, and I'll put, of course, a link to the website in the show notes for this episode so people can go check it out. But everything's just like really clearly labeled and easy to find what you're looking for, what you need, and what the specific situation you're in. What kind of items are included in the system?
Well, back to your first point. What was happening when I looked into the space is, not only was it poor quality stuff, I call it commodity stuff. Mm-hmm. It's just generic, cheap, but it was just a pile of products in a crappy backpack. And if you reverse engineer from the time of emergency, very rarely are you uncompromised. It might be dark, it might be freezing, it might be wet, it may be smoke filled, you can't breathe or you can't see, you may be upside down in a car or have a broken arm. So getting to the right tools quickly and also calming the brain down was just hypercritical, right? When adrenaline pumps, you start making bad situations worse because you have these quick reactions that are fight or flight. And most times those are going to make things worse. So what we did is we organized things, we color coordinated them, we used infographics, and we have screen printed instructions everywhere so that if you have somebody in shock or a broken bone or you're cold, you grab the blue packet and here's the first 5 steps. And if you get through those first 5 steps, your situation has dramatically improved. So for us, it's not just gear, but it's the guiding voice and the confidence that you're making the right decisions in those times, which once you start having a positive mental attitude and you're like, I got this. I mean, statistically, even that's a huge game changer for being successful in a situation like this versus not being. We were on Shark Tank and a couple of years ago, season 9, and Lori asked me, she said, what's the most important thing in the kit? And I said, well, what's the emergency? So when you ask what's in there, there's 35 to 40, I think, different things depending on how you count it. What I mean by that is there's a nice first aid kit in there with 50 pieces alone. I don't really count those independently, but we went through and looked at the fact that the human body needs warmth, maybe first aid, food, water, shelter. When I say warmth or stay cool, right? You could be in the desert, you could be in a snowstorm. No matter the emergency or the situation, those things are always consistent. The human body needs those things. So all the things in our kit are designed to get people to sustainable, situations when it comes to nutrition, water, first aid, hydration, shelter, all of that. So there's water filters. There's several different ways to create fire. There's light, flashlight, glow sticks, matches. There's blankets. There's hats. There's gloves. There's goggles. We even made a hard plastic exoskeleton to what we call the insert, which is an organizer where everything is organized inside the bag. That you pull these plastic panels out and they're pre-drilled to make snowshoes or an arm sling or to use to dig. We used every piece of the kit. The bag itself. I designed a backpack, which now other brands are starting to copy, but it's a roll top dry bag. It will float you. So you can fill it with air and put it on your chest if you're in a hurricane situation or maybe your boat's going down. And you suddenly have a life preserver. You can put it on grandma and just make things easier. So almost every piece of the kit is a bit of a transformer and is designed to work together to get you to the solution no matter the emergency.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that there's multiple uses for a lot of the things in the kit.
Well, one of the things people make a mistake of is when they build a kit, they put a lot of stuff in there. And if you have to move or you're covering some distance, you're injured, extra weight, extra bulk slows you down. It gets you sweaty, which then sweat can turn into cold, and that can turn into hypothermia, right? You burn more calories. So there's really a need to create something that's not only effective, but doesn't weigh 80 pounds. You need to be able to move with it. And so that's something that often gets overlooked. But that's why we think of it that way.
Awesome. What's one of your favorite items in the system?
Well, I really think what sets us apart is what I call the insert and the backpack. It's pretty easy to go to the CDC website or ready.gov or FEMA or wherever and find their checklist and buy all those pieces. But as I said earlier, you put them all in a backpack and then your adrenaline's pumping and it may not be effective. So what I love is you open our bag up, you know that everything's dry, everything's protected, the batteries aren't corroded, there wasn't mice in there. You pull out this beautiful insert, you can open it up, you have a clean place to work, and it has all these instructions and color coordination. It's paint by numbers. It's just a very effective way to progress in your situation. So for me, the it's less about the products and more about the guidance. I think in the end we're selling peace of mind, and I think that's the most effective piece of the kit.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and there is it does have a price point to it, for the quality and everything that you're getting in the system. But when you're in a situation like that, how can you put a price on it,
Well, that's an interesting point. When I started, most survival kits were $75 or something like that. And it was hard to overcome that. But one of the things we do on our website, and you can go check it right now, is we have a link to how to build your own survival kit. Our goal here is to make the world a safer place. And if people want to go build their own, they're competent and capable. I don't fault them at all for doing that. What we find, though, is when people go out to build one of these kits, they start realizing how difficult it actually is to source all these different high-quality pieces, to get them into a kit, to figure out how to organize it so it makes sense in your brain. And it usually costs more money than just buying ours. You end up going to 7 or 8 different stores and still missing a few things. And that's the feedback we get all the time. So it is expensive, but man, if you're in an emergency and you need this stuff, it's almost priceless.
Right.
So our goal was to make something that was affordable, that allowed us to keep growing our business and to keep the lights on, and to try to build something that could be purchased at scale, because there's a big difference between making something 100 people can afford versus 100,000 people. I think we only reach our goal if we achieve critical mass, and so that was the goal with our products.
And you also have a pro system. What's the difference between that and the regular one?
Yeah, so there was 2 pieces of feedback, or 2 things that happened after I launched the 72. The 72 is designed for one person, and I still like the idea of one person, because let's say I have a kit for, I don't have a wife, but if I had a wife, I had a kit for me and my wife. Well, if I'm at work and my wife is at work and we don't work together and something happens, now I've got double and she has nothing, right? So I do think that there's some value in everybody having their own. That said, given a family with 5 or 6 people in it, having a kit for 2 or more people is effective, right? So the Pro Kit was really designed to accommodate 2 or more people. And then we were also just selling so many of these to government agencies, to professionals, so emergency response teams, Border Patrol, FBI, CIA, Secret Service even. These guys are buying these, and they're like, hey, we want to upgrade this piece and this piece. And that's because they are going to use these on a more daily basis versus the kind of break glass in case of emergency situation. So what we did is we designed it for 2, and then we upgraded all the pieces to just be more robust. It's more money, of course, better quality products at scale costs more money, but that product is now outselling the original 72 2 to 1. So what we're finding is people really like the value that it brings. It's not double the price of the 72, but it works for 2 or more people, and the products are even nicer. So it's that's kind of the situation there.
One thing I forgot to or wanted to point out too is you even went so far as in the design process of this to not make it obvious that it's a survival kit, because if we are in some sort of crazy situation, you don't want somebody attacking you for your survival kit.
The last thing you want to do when there's a run on supplies or food is to have a backpack that says emergency supplies. It's an inadvertent way to make yourself a target. So our first product was like this heathered gray, which is really it's pretty, it looks stylish, it's cool looking, but also blends in pretty well. So you're not sticking out like a sore thumb. Now with the Pro, we make gray, we make black, red, orange, olive. People wanted different colors, but our goal was to make them look really cool consumer product, a little more Apple or Nike versus Army. Right. And I think the design of it, the shape, it tends to look a little less preppery, I think. And I think that was an important thing for people kind of adopting what we were doing.
So obviously everyone knows that this year has been super crazy with the pandemic and all the riots and all the things going on. Have you seen like an uptick in people buying these systems this year because of that?
So we I've mostly bootstrapped this company since the foundation of it, or the formation of it, meaning I sold my house and bought inventory. And, we're just a few years old. We just turned 4 years old here. And I think that, last year we sold out halfway through kind of our Black Friday holiday season. So we'd ordered again towards the end of last year, and then COVID started hitting across the ocean over in China and all the other countries where we source products, which is like 10 or 12 different countries. So we had this constraint on products, and we really didn't have inventory to build full kits until July of this year. That said, we've sold twice as much already as we did last year. So there's a significant amount of demand. This year we were able to raise a little bit of money. It almost 100% went into buying inventory. And we are just seeing incredible demand. I think if anybody's listening to this and wants to grab one, I would just say don't wait, because we've done our best to forecast, but given the way this year's gone and seeing what's happening, you can't really put a price on having preparedness for your family, and we've got inventory now, and we hope we have enough, but it's been an interesting year.
Yeah, and I know, obviously, I'm in the boating industry, and so that has really seen a huge increase this year. But so have RVs, and I think something like this would be perfect for people that are hitting the road and traveling, because you're putting yourself at more risk of certain situations coming up. I know I'm actually in the process of getting a truck camper and going to do some traveling here, so I keep thinking, man, this would be something great to have, just to throw it in the camper and make sure we're prepared.
Well, the other product we have that I think works for both those situations extremely well is the product we call the Zeus, and it's a little. It's a little kind of, I'm trying to think of what I can compare the size to. But it's a battery jump starter. I mean, you can hold it in your hand. It's a pound and a half. My dad, I grew up on a dairy farm. My dad has started, he started 3 Mack semis back to back to back in Wisconsin in January last year with it, because they didn't plug them in one night and the temperature dropped. Super powerful, has USB to charge your phone several times, has a flashlight. But we've seen a lot of boaters and camping enthusiasts embrace this thing, because it's not hard to get to the trailhead, early in the morning and head out for a weekend and come back and realize you left your dome light on. Mm-hmm. And now you're in a place where there's no service, there's nobody around, there's nobody to jump you, and this thing will just start you right up. And same thing with a boat, right? Mm-hmm. You get on the water, maybe you've got your depth finder on, or your speakers or your wakeboard boat is cranking, and you go to start and it just clicks. And so instead of trying to flag somebody down and string jumper cables across a couple boats, you've got this little thing and away you go. So again, when we look at emergencies, I think emergencies can be big or small. But having something like the Zeus in your car changes kind of a day ruiner into just a couple minute inconvenience. And I think that's a really powerful way to think about that.
I just brought it up on the website here. Yeah, that would definitely come in handy.
Oh yeah.
Very nice.
It's very small. I mean, it's like I'm trying to think of something else that is that shape, but it's like smaller than a shoe. You know, it's kind of like that size. It's a little square, so it's pretty cool.
Nice. So now you guys have been in operation for a few years. Have you had any stories coming back where somebody was in a terrible situation and had to make use of your survival system?
That's a great question, and it's kind of a weird one because yes, but different than you may think. Okay. What happens is everybody thinks, somebody's going to be near death, and then like a 72 falls out of the sky and they're saved. What happens is when people have these things with them, the story never gets that bad, Mm-hmm. So I think if you think of an emergency going from 1 to 100, the emergency gets cut off at 10 because they had the right stuff with them. So we hear these stories all the time of, oh man, I had this and I did this and I was back on the road. It never gets that bad. We've had a couple people who, were stuck in snowstorms and said, hey, we were prepared. We had your blankets, we had your hats. Like it was a game changer. A couple like that. But most times what we hear from people is this could have been really bad, but I was able to nip it quickly, and it never got that bad. So I totally get that these big life-saving stories would probably be great marketing moments for us, but I think we don't get them because our products are doing a good job to stop them first.
Yeah, and that's the whole point. So
exactly.
Cool. What's been the most rewarding for you being a part of this?
Oh gosh, when I started the company, I told people I definitely I didn't want to just have a job that paid me money. I wanted to leave a legacy and to make a difference. Mm-hmm. And every time we get one of these stories like we just discussed, I have a little proud moment internally. Mm-hmm. or every time somebody says, gosh, or every time one of these kits leaves the warehouse, I think, man, that's somebody that's a little safer. And that really makes me proud. We've got a very small team, 6 or 7 people here that are working extremely hard. And I think we're making a difference. So for me, that's what I love. I love that we created something from an idea, and it's being adopted and it's growing. And we get, one day Ashton Kutcher tweets about us, and the next day the CIA orders some, and it's cool. We got Navy SEALs that come in and buy stuff from us. So we had a friend of mine that's a SEAL came in and grabbed some stuff before he went to Alaska on a big hunt. And I'm like, these guys could kind of get whatever they wanted, and they're here. And I think that's something that I take a lot of pride in.
Awesome. Talk a little bit about the team. I know that on your website, there's some information on there. It seems like you have a pretty robust team as far as people having different backgrounds and such.
Yeah. I mean, when I started, I had a handful of people that were very instrumental. Like I said, doctors, mountain guides. In my opinion, nothing replaces experience. I would rather, I just got back from a hunt in Alaska where my guide was a smoke jumper. He had a biology degree. He had taught Outward Bound. He had been a biology teacher, and he spends his life out there doing that stuff. And I would much rather know what was in his brain versus a book or going to a class, So when we started this, I reached out to, call it authentic or call it experience, but people that live and breathe this stuff, because as you know, when you're out in the elements, when you're out in nature, it's very different than when you read about it. Right. There's just different emotions. There's different feelings. There's things. It's like tying a knot might be hard because your fingers are frozen. Like when you're sitting in your home reading a book, it's like, why can't this guy tie a knot? That seems really trivial, So for me, it was finding those people that I always say, these are people I would follow into a very dark night. These are the people that I trust, that I learn from. Mm-hmm. And I've become somewhat of an expert on this, but I kind of pale in comparison to the guys that I count on for their advice and their perspective, because they've been in life or death situations. They've saved people. They've rescued people. They've explored places people haven't been. And I think that's just a perspective you don't get any other way. So yeah, we run the gamut from, Dr. Eric Meyer. He's a doctor in Steamboat Springs. He's been up Everest several times. He saved a bunch of lives up on K2 during the most deadly mountaineering event in U.S. history, in American history, American climbing history. We've got guys that are business leaders. We've got Navy SEALs. We're always adding to that team because I think everyone brings a unique perspective that is going to resonate with somebody. Mm-hmm. So that's how we think about that.
Very cool. The real deal, for sure.
Absolutely.
Where do you see the future? Do you have new products you're developing, or what's kind of?
Yeah, we have a really interesting pipeline of products. I'm going to not talk about them because everybody's been copying us lately, and I'm going to hold those to ourselves. But I think we're going to surprise people. I think when we went to survival kits, to a battery jump starter, to a pack raft, that just shows where our head's at. Right, we're not making just backpacks. Well, we may make variations. The Pros for 2 people, the 72s for 1. Maybe we make something that's for kids or for pets. We're just looking at emergencies in general. Like what are people experiencing? What are the hardships? How do we create something that's going to improve their situation in those moments? And then let's build it. So yeah, we've got a great pipeline of products. We are working on collaborations with large automotive companies, bike companies, famous survival personalities on TV. We are, we're trying to build out some curriculum right now and some more educational stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, our goal is to create a brand that people trust and they come to us when they're unsure. Whether that's making them a customer or not, doesn't really matter to me. I think if we're providing this service, everybody's going to win. And so that's kind of how we're trying to move forward.
Awesome. Well, like I mentioned, I'll put a link to the website Uncharted Supply Co.com in the show notes for this episode. Also, y'all are on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, so I'll put links to all those so people can follow you. And I appreciate you coming on the show this week, and I'm excited to get the word out, and especially for women, that's probably the biggest audience of this show, outdoor adventures, and definitely want to have something like this in your arsenal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people always say, hey, who's your target audience? And I just go, hey, everybody's going to have an emergency at some point, right? So that's our goal, is to get this in everyone's hands. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk to your audience, and thanks everyone for listening.